What's up, y'all? Welcome into the Gramlich and Mac Lane podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Ingles. Big episode today as we have Jordan Reid, my brother, back on the podcast. He is the best, and for making time for us, I'm always eternally grateful. This guy literally just landed 6 hours ago from Indianapolis after his combine coverage and sprinted straight to the microphone, jumped on with me to talk about some of his favorite ACC prospects that he liked at the combine. Some guys that, we did not cover with EJ Manuel last week. So it was a lot of fun to kind of sit down with him, hear his thoughts on these guys, some really quick risers. Donovan Ezeraku, my brother, let's go. He's killing it. Really fun to see him. And, of course, Amarian Hampton just continues to impress each and everybody that he sees, that sees him, especially what he did at the NFL Combine. And some fun stuff on some quarterback conversation as well. So without further ado, we're going to get to a message from our friends over at Ingles. Always grateful for them and their support of this show. And then, of course, we are going to get to my brother, Jordan Reid. Here we go.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department, or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Jordan Reid, my brother, the busiest time of the year for you, and somehow you're making time for little old me, and I'm grateful and I appreciate it. Great to see you, big dog. How you doing?
I'm good, man. If it came down to anything, I would make time for EMAC. You know how this goes, man.
My man, I appreciate that very much. Well, you just got back, literally. We're talking, and you just landed. You just got back from Indy. I know it never gets old, but just walk me through it, man. What is the combine like for Jordan Reid? Do you have certain places you go, restaurants, the way you do things? Walk me through your process there.
Yeah, so the welcome to the combine moment, of course, is the shrimp cocktail from St. Elmo's. If you're not doing that, then you haven't officially been welcomed to the combine. It always starts with that, man. But then after that is business as usual, evaluating prospects, going inside Lucas Oil Stadium, just seeing these guys run around, move around, jump around. It's the fun part of the process.
Yeah, it really is, man. And, it's funny, the more guys that, we will talk to as time goes on. But when I reference back to, recent guys in the past and maybe last year, year before, and even talking with EJ Manuel, my brother, who was a part of this process back in his day in 2013 there, the on-field stuff is obviously what we see from afar. Your boots on the ground, it's a little bit different for you and your vantage point. But, man, it seems like there is so much more that goes into it than just the underwear Olympic part. Walk me through some of that and maybe some things that you heard overall and some things that, these NFL teams and GMs and scouts and people are looking for.
Well, yes. I mean, the on-field stuff is for the crowd, people watching on TV, for us sitting on the stands. But where it's most valuable for NFL teams, I should say, is the medical portion and then the interview portion. That's really the most important part of this entire thing, just because you want to know what's going on with guys medically, just because you're about to invest so much money in a lot of these guys. And then what I like to call speed dating with these interviews. Each team gets 15-minute interviews with these guys. So just trying to figure out, they'll go through some tape with them, or if they just have some questions that may have happened on the field or off the field, just trying to get some answers with that and some clarity with those things.
Yeah, and one thing that's been interesting to me, Jay Reid, is just the opting out way of life that we are right now, right? Guys don't want to play in bowl games. Guys don't want to, do this and that. And now, you see it in the combine really, I don't know, it's super common. Guys aren't going to throw, guys aren't going to run, this and that. And it's weird. EJ Manuel put a little bit of ease to me because, as you just kind of mentioned, really the most important part are those medicals and those meetings that happen that we just don't see. But I can't help to think, as a competitor, as a guy who, man, I would have loved to have been able to be on that field and do anything, right, to improve, kind of your stock. I also have never been drafted and wasn't a multimillionaire, right? So it's different, and you take these decisions. Is there anything that goes into that with some of these scouts, with these GMs, if a guy decides not to do something, doesn't run or doesn't throw or doesn't whatever at the combine?
Well, of course, you would love to see every guy go out there and compete. Just because the competitor in you or competitor in them, you would love to see them go out and compete with those other guys at his position and his surroundings, just to see who has the best time or who has the best jumps or things like that. But I was talking to a lot of scouts actually about this, and they put it in its layman's terms. And like, let's say Ohio State or, a school like that played in a national title game. These guys just finished playing on January 20th, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So now you turn around 5 or 6 weeks later and then have to come to the combine. So it's just too quick of a turnaround for a lot of guys, which is really understandable. And this is your resume. This is your job interview. And if you're not completely healthy, or if you just didn't have a lot of time to train, you don't want to go out there and perform the biggest interview of your life and you're not in tip-top shape. So from that perspective, it definitely is understandable. But I thought that was a really interesting viewpoint from some scouts and evaluators that I was talking to.
Yeah, it's a great point. And even, just to look at my situation a little bit, I was exhausted, right? Like, I did play in the Natty, and it wasn't as long as it was this past year. So I can't even imagine, all the different games, how your body feels, and then have to go straight into training for the most important 40-yard dash of your life, right? It's like all these crazy things that do come into play. Well, Jay, let's jump into some of these prospects, man, because, there's a lot of great options out here, a lot of fun talent, and some guys that I think are going to really make some noise come draft day that performed, great at the NFL Combine. And, man, there's 3 running backs for the ACC that performed really well and I think got some people excited. Let's start with Omarion Hampton, because I think back to October, Eddie Royal sitting on the desk with me, Virginia Tech legend, Chicago Bear, Denver Bronco, all these things. And he was saying Omarion Hampton's going to get drafted before Ashton Genty. And I was like, there ain't no way. But there seems to be a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz around Omarion Hampton right now. What did you see from him? And is that crazy to think right now that Omarion will be the first running back taken?
No, it's not. I mean, I've talked to some teams that actually do have him as the top graded running back in this year's draft. So Eddie's not wrong at all in that thinking. It just depends on which one you like better, right? Ashton Genty or Omarion Hampton. But I've been excited about him since Drake May's Pro Day last year. And a lot of people don't know this. He actually participated in Drake May's Pro Day last year. Wow. He wanted to show to scouts that he could catch the ball, just because that was a big question mark about him coming to the season, just because Carolina doesn't really use him in that fashion, just because he's so good as a runner. They don't really use him in the passing game as much, but he wanted to go out at Drake May's Pro Day and show that he is a comfortable catcher of the ball, and I thought he caught it really well. And then he goes out, and if it wasn't for the year that Ashton Genty had, Omarion Hampton, he was absolutely terrific last year. I mean, I believe he went 10 straight games with over 100 yards. I go back to the Wake Forest game, the NC State game, and then there was another game. I can't remember, but those were the 2 that really come to mind that really popped on the film about him. But, 6 foot, 221 pounds. He has that rocked up, chiseled build. He makes dudes bite down on their mouthpiece when they come into contact
That's right.
with him. He's just that type of runner that just wears on defenses throughout games. So I'm a big Omarion Hampton fan, man. Like, I think he's going to end up being a first-round pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up going, or if he's selected before Ashton Genty.
Wow. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. And I think that there is some of that where it's like, you're talking about a guy that was on a playoff team that got a ton of love, that's getting Heisman conversation. And it's just one of those things where if you look at the nitty-gritty and you look at who do you want running the ball on 3rd and 2, it's going to be hard not to think, you want this guy from North Carolina that is so big and strong, done it time and time again, and Omarion Hampton. Is there any concern with the wear and tear? I mean, this guy's had 600 carries in 2 seasons. Do scouts look at that at all, or do they already kind of realize, hey, the shelf life of a running back is what it is. We're going to get the most out of this guy when we can?
Yeah, I mean, the shelf life is what it is. And I mean, if a Lamborghini is running at full speed when you get it, I mean, I'm going to keep pressing the gas if it hasn't shown any wear and tear. And I mean, that's what Omarion Hampton is. But I'm a big fan of this player, man. Like, I would be shocked if he makes it outside the first round. That's how good he was. And the opinion on him is really, really high right now.
Yeah, no, I can totally get it. We've watched him very intimately for a long time. That guy's going to be a freak of nature. Now, another guy that maybe had wear and tear for 1 season, but certainly not for his career. And I'm fascinated to see what you've heard on how they evaluate this player, given what he did for 4 years and then the explosion that we saw at SMU this year with Brashard Smith. I mean, that guy was a utility receiver specialist that emerged into a 250-plus carry guy, 1,300 yards, running a 4.3 at the NFL Combine. What is the NFL's feel on Brashard Smith?
What I thought was really interesting about him is that they requested him to work out at 2 positions. So he worked out with the receivers and he worked out with the running backs as well, just because, I mean, he was a receiver at Miami as well. So they wanted to see, could he run routes as a running back and then also as a receiver as well. But my first exposure to him, I actually was there when they played Clemson in the ACC title game. So I was blown away by like just the quickness, the quick twitch ability, and then the versatility that he has. And I have it in my scouting report. He reminds me a lot of Tyrone Tracy when he was coming out last year, and we saw what he was able to do in his rookie season with the Giants. And I had an opportunity to actually talk to him at the combine, and he just lit up when being able to talk about how Coach Lashley used him this year. And he said, if teams want to use me as a receiver, as a running back, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and that seems to be his understanding is I just got to get on the field, whatever it looks like. To me, it sounds like he's a Kansas City Chief. I don't know. It's just they're pretty good at using those running backs as receivers and receivers as running backs, whatever it takes there. So I'm with you. And just his impacts on special teams. I mean, he was the specialist of the year 2 years ago with the things that he did at Miami. So a really special player. This guy right here in Bashal Tootin is fascinating to me because maybe it was Virginia Tech colored glasses that people were talking about, but I saw a handful of people saying this guy just locked up the first round. Is that crazy? I mean, I don't think there's any way that we're getting 3 running backs in the first round, are we?
I mean, we could get 3 running backs, but him going that early would be surprising to me.
Yeah.
Now, day 2, I definitely think he locked up that just with his combine performance and then how versatile he is. I mean, he put on a show inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. He ran into 4 threes. He jumped super high. His broad jump was outstanding as well. And that's what you want to see from these running backs. You want to see them go out there and compete, especially with the class that I think could be the first time we get 30 running backs drafted since 2017.
Wow.
That just goes to show you how deep this running back class is. So if I were a running back, I'm going to figure out a way how I could position myself to be at the cream of the crop in this year's class. And he definitely proved himself inside of Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, you've got quantity and quality, it seems like, in this class of running backs. And you mentioned the 30 RBs drafted since 2013 or 2017. Do we have the opportunity to reach that or break that? I also kind of want to ask you just the vibe on the running back position, because there was this couple year span where it's just like devalued. And maybe we are still there. But given what Saquon Barkley did this offseason, bet on himself, and we saw the impact that guy had, arguably being the best player on the best team, winning a Super Bowl, did that just give a shot of nitrous to the position? And people are like, wait a minute now, we can still win at the highest level with a good guy at this position.
Yeah, E-Mac, I always say trends in football are like fashion. You're seeing Champion come back into style. Fila somehow has made a comeback. Reebok's making a comeback. That's what happened with the running back. When we were growing up, I mean, we were seeing big-time running backs go early in the draft. I grew up on a guy, Adrian Peterson, who was the 7th overall pick, I believe, in 2007. We saw how well he ended up playing. We're seeing all these running backs go early. Now, Saquon, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs really have their running back in style now. So it's really a trend that I'm hoping stays here, just because running backs are very important, and we've seen that they can be a game changer in any type of offense, especially when you utilize them in the right way.
Right, yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. I'm excited to kind of get back to it. Well, I bring up the Eagles and kind of their blueprint. A guy that fits that mold, just being bigger, stronger, faster than everybody, is Anthony Belton. I mean, this guy, we called him Cadillac, Escalade, back at NC State. Very nimble, very big, and he's been the cornerstone of a really good offensive line there for NC State for a long time. He's had great coaching when you look at how he's been built up, and of course with Dave Doran, that kind of blue-collar, hard-edge mentality. This is a guy that's built the right way. What did you see from Anthony at the NFL Combine that impressed you?
Yeah, he's somebody that I've had my eye on for quite a long time. I thought he was going to declare last year, but he ends up going back, and he played better last year, in my opinion. I was really impressed by him at the Senior Bowl as well, but a quick note on him that I thought was really interesting. They played him at guard as well. That's something that I didn't know that he had in his bag. So him being able to show off that versatility at guard as well as left or right tackle, that's something that's going to help him catapult over some other people in draft rooms, especially if somebody is a guard only or a tackle only prospect. Mm-hmm. So him showing comfort at that guard and that tackle spot, I definitely think that's going to help him. But something that I think really helped him is just getting the weight under control. And that's something that a lot of people at NC State said about him. Came in a little overweight, came in at about 360. He got it around to 335 and 340 this year, which I think is definitely going to be his playing weight on the next level. I think he projects best in that gap man power scheme to where you just get a body on a body and just allow him to move people out the way. I know that's going to get your face really lit up just being able to move dudes out the way. Power, some of those gap schemes that a lot of people like to run. So I'm thinking the Steelers, the Ravens, that downhill, just smash mouth type of team. I definitely think those are the type of teams that are going to like Anthony Belton somewhere on day 2.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And you mentioned, I feel like you and I talk about this every year when we talk draft, when we talk combine, about just when do you move a guy? Where do you put him if he did something so long? And, I know people over-obsess, and we can talk about the cat out of LSU that I think is locked up. Like, he's got to be a top 5 pick, Campbell. But people get so obsessed with the arms. If the arms aren't in the right spot, what are your kind of feelings on? Is it just silly? Is it fun to talk about? Like, what with the intangibles that are set, the minimums, the exceptions to the rule, like where do you kind of fall on those things?
Well, you always have thresholds in the NFL just because you always want to add probability to guys just because it helps you with what's called an educated guess in the draft. Nobody knows how any of these guys are going to turn out. So if I have a certain threshold, I want to stick by that just because there's evidence shown in the NFL that anybody with under 33-inch arms, it usually doesn't work out for them at tackle. So that's what's happening with Will Campbell. But whenever you're debating a guy, if a guy is a guard or a tackle, I've always been of the belief that allow that guy to show you that he cannot play tackle first before you move him, just because tackle is such an important position. I'm always going to try that guy there first, whether it's on the left or the right side, and have him show me that he cannot play that position before I slot him inside.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, especially just, we think, offensive line is offensive line. Do all 5, man. They're all the same.
Yeah.
They are different, especially when you're asking somebody to maybe something they've done their whole life, and now at the best, most competitive, hardest stage, you're going to ask them to do something different. All right, we'll see. Maybe. A lot of guys have done it, but it is a difficult thing to do. Before we go to the defensive side of the ball with a couple of prospects, I do kind of want to finish the offense here with my guy, Alec, A.O. Manor from Stanford. A really fun prospect. I think his best ball way ahead of him. Has not played football at a super high level for long. Big, rangy, fast. I mean, he's got it all for a wide receiver.
Yeah, he does, and I thought he was the catalyst of that offense over the past 2 seasons. Still very young, but the thing about him is that big possession guy. He can climb the ladder, go up and get it. Really good route runner, but just the nuance and the savvy that he plays with, that's something that really pops on his tape. But he caught the ball really well. I thought he did really good in the gauntlet drill, and he went out and he tested really well as well. So round 2 is what I've been hearing from a lot of teams, and there's a bit of a cluster of a lot of wide receivers in this draft class. We don't really have those marquee names at the top like we saw last year.
Right.
With Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors. There's not that bona fide guy at the top, but I think we're going to see a lot of these guys come off of the board in round 2 and round 3.
Yeah, I love that, man. And again, there's something too when a guy can still be developed. He's pretty raw, and you can squeeze out a really good prospect. It just takes time and coaching and what do you want to kind of do with them there. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball, because one guy that I've just been waiting for his time. He's going to go eventually. When's it going to be? I was glad he stayed as long as he did, and that's Donovan Ezeraku, because he exploded this year, man. Was the nation's leading sack master or tied for it. Really versatile in his game. I'm sure, folks would like him to be a little bit taller, a little bit longer, but he's got 34, inch arms and really showed his ability this year. What'd you see from him at the combine? And then also, what is best fit? Is he going to be a stand-up guy, an edge, a linebacker? What do NFL teams want to do with him?
Yeah, he's a guy his stock is just steady skyrocketed. And I go back to that Florida State game of where he was absolutely outstanding in that game. That was by far my favorite game to watch of him on tape this year. Just the bend that he has, the hand maturity, the execution, and the repertoire of moves that he has. That's something that you notice about him. He was awesome at the Senior Bowl. There was nobody that could block him, especially as a pass rusher. The run defense is something that you want to see get a little bit better, but that's every defensive end in this draft. It's just hand placement and just the violence that they have with setting the edge. So that's something that he does have to get better with. But I think he's a first-round player all day long. I would be surprised if he got outside of the back end of the first round. There's a lot of teams in that area that need a defensive end. I look at the Detroit Lions would be a really good spot for him. Even the Eagles with the last pick in the first round, we know they always love to have defensive linemen as well. So Ezeraku is somebody that's consistently gotten better throughout his career. 16.5 sacks last year, was second in the FBS. Yeah. So we know he's able to rush the passer.
Yeah, he's really freaking just a great dude. I mean, involved with his community, involved with his school, his fraternity, all these different things, and still doing it at the absolute highest level. And those Boston College guys, man, they know what to do. They're smart. They can get after it, and he's a war daddy. It's really fun to watch. Quincy Riley's a guy that has faced a little bit of adversity with some injuries, has exploded onto the scene and then maybe fell back a little bit, put together a relatively solid career. Big, rangy corner. I mean, I like his size and the things that he can do there. Where do you see him falling, in this draft, and what did he do at the combine to help himself?
Yeah, I don't know what's in the water up there in Louisville, but I mean, they're producing some DBs, man. Keitrell Clark, we were talking about him a couple years ago. Jarvis Brownlee last year, we saw what he was able to do, go on to have a very successful rookie season. And then now it's Quincy Riley's turn. And I mean, I think he's the best of all three. We saw how well he was able to test. He played really well down at the Senior Bowl. Got hurt the final day of practice, but those first 2 days, I thought he was awesome. There's some teams that Philly projects best inside as a nickel, which I'm completely fine with just because he's physical as a tackler. He's really good, has really good hip mobility, really good in coverage as well, has great ball skills too. So I think he's somebody that could go in the second or the third round. I think that's a fair projection for him right now, but I think he's ready to play right away.
Yeah, he's a ball player, man. And again, you talk about smart leader, he's got it. And I don't say that a lot about a lot of cornerbacks, but he's got it done. And he's a fun guy to watch and just has great ball skills too. I mean, he's a really, really good player there. Jay, I can't get you out of here without talking quarterbacks. And I know I asked you for your list, and here it is.
I got to sit up, man.
We got to talk about QBs. And I want to start with, the guy who I think can be the first overall pick. We talked with E.J. Manuel about this as well. He has some familiarity with the Titans head coach there, and I think he was his quarterback coach, when he was in the league, and he kind of said, hey, he's going to get his guy. He's going to want to get his guy, and there's a lot of thought and a lot of steam, I believe, that Cam can go number one there to the Titans if they don't trade it. What kind of things are you hearing about that, and what do you expect come draft day?
Well, they still have some things to figure out. They're going through what's called the top 30 visits over the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, which is where they bring everybody or the prospects that they're interested in on campus. They'll be able to go through the facility. They'll be able to have a private workout with them as well. So that's where they'll determine exactly what they're going to do. Cam is expected to be one of those top 30 visits, so he'll go to Nashville. They'll be able to get a good look at him. But I love Cam Ward, man. He's my favorite quarterback in this draft. He's been my QB1 since about September. He's a player that's progressively gotten better throughout the year, but just think of how he got here moment, that underdog mentality that he plays with. Everywhere that he's been, he's had a huge impact on that program. We saw Miami have one of their best seasons in school history last season, but just the arm angles he's able to throw from, that shortstop-like release that he has, but the poise and the uncanny ability just to make plays, especially in the fourth quarter, even though sometimes it is his own doing just because of some of the mistakes that he does have, but just the ability to make those uncanny plays when his team needs him the most. That's why I like Cam Ward so much. Yeah,
he's been so fun to watch, and really his whole career. It's funny, some folks were interviewing him throughout the season, and they're asking him, how are you doing this? He says, well, I've been doing it my whole career. You just now see it because it's on the biggest stage. Some of that creativity is interesting, though, because it can give you pause because at this next level, those mistakes equals losses, equals guys getting fired, equals jobs opening and things of that nature. What have you heard? Are there any type of concerns, or how do you coach it, I guess, when a guy is that creative and extend plays the way he does? Because we've seen it with Mahomes. We've seen it with Josh Allen. We've seen it with a handful of guys in the NFL, but there are also some growing pains that might come with that.
Yeah, that's in his draft profile, but the thing that I love about him is that that's just the life of a playmaker. And for every 2 or 3 mistakes that he makes, he's going to make 9 or 10 highlight plays. But, when you think about the top quarterbacks in the NFL, and I'm not comparing Cam to these guys, but just his skill set, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, they have the ability, even when the offensive coordinator or head coach calls the right play or maybe even the wrong play, he can make that play right. So that's what I like about him, but I love using analogies when I'm talking about quarterbacks. You instruct Cam a lot of times to jump off the 10 or 15-foot high dive, but there's a lot of times he gets curious and he wants to climb up that ladder and jump off that 25 or 30-foot high dive. So the coach that coaches him is going to have to straddle the line of allowing him to be a playmaker, but sometimes just say, hey, man, let's just rein it in a little bit, and let's take our first or second option in the progression.
Yeah. Where do you see, I guess, the biggest learning curve piece for him? Is it going to be what mistakes I can get away with or where I can fit the ball? Is it, grasping the offense? Is it just being on your own? Where do you see him maybe being the biggest thing? Hey, you got to focus right here next year.
It's just controlling his appetite for those big chunk plays down the field.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of times on film, the underneath or the short to intermediate throw may be open, but Cam gets so curious, wanting to jump off that 25 or 30-foot high dive, he'll just throw a bomb down the field, and it ends up being incomplete or an interception. So just understanding that, hey, man, it's okay to take the first or second option or the underneath option on your progression and really just try not to satisfy your appetite of trying to chase those chunk plays down the field.
Yeah, taking what they give you. There's a lot of money there if you can do that. I've seen TB12 do it for 1 billion years. He did okay in his football career there. How about Kyle McCord? He's another guy that, man, just had an unbelievable year. Have the passing title and throwing the ball all over the yard. Coming from Ohio State where, he's still admirable. I mean, he won 11 games his first year as a starter and was, really good and all these different things. And it just seemed like people didn't give him any credit. And then he goes to Syracuse, does what he does, and here he is, on this table. What do you expect him to go and do in these next couple of months for this draft process?
Yeah, so back during the preseason when we were doing the On the Road tour with ACC Network, I actually was able to help Syracuse, so I got to see Rondé Gaston and McCord actually practice. And I'm seeing this guy throw a practice, and I'm like, man, this dude has a really good arm. He's really accurate. And Fran Brown just raved about his leadership. It's very rare to see a guy come into a program and essentially just grab everybody's attention like he did. And we were able to sit down with McCord as well. And I just love how he was able to really reestablish himself. And you just saw the effect that he had on that program at Syracuse. I mean, they won 10 games last year, which is something that hadn't happened in quite a long time there. So just his overall leadership. And there's not a lot of guys that would be able to really reestablish himself, especially with how it ended at Ohio State, and then just being able to do that at Syracuse. But, I mean, I like Cal McCord quite a bit. I think he's probably going to end up going in the 3rd or 4th round if I had to guess right now. But he's one of my favorite mid-round quarterbacks in this year's draft.
Yeah, what a great, just opportunity for him to be able to bet on himself, go somewhere else, and just rebirth his career. I mean, my gosh, you're talking about 3rd, 4th round. That's tremendous. That's going to a really good team. That's getting some time, and who knows to what you can develop into and become at that point. Similar guy, very different career, but similar guy in regards to a little bit older and things of that nature of all three of these ACC guys. Tyler Shuck at Louisville is a guy that, again, you mentioned what's in the water there. They just start putting out these prospects, man, and guys that are playing ball at a really high level. He had a fantastic year, but it seems like people have fallen even more in love with him postseason after the season was done throughout this entire process.
Yeah, he's one that a lot of NFL teams could not stop talking about when I was at the Combine, just because of how smart he is, being able to overcome all those injuries. And we both know he's very experienced as well, with how long he's been in college, but has really good arm talent. The Notre Dame game, I believe, was his best, in my honest opinion. He was able to show some off-script ability, some ability outside of the pocket, but we know what he's able to do from inside the pocket as well. Really accurate, really smart. They rave about his leadership and just his football character and his football IQ from the people that I have talked there. So there's some people, as long as you're comfortable with the age, I think he could go early 3rd round or even in the back end of the 2nd round. That wouldn't be surprising at all.
Wow, that's fascinating and going to be fun to see. 3 quarterbacks that were very impactful in the ACC this year and kind of what they're going to be able to do. I do want to touch on what you just said right there at the end. If you're comfortable with the age, it has felt like there has been this shift, that occurred when the transfer portal NIL era became a thing, that the NFL kind of shifted too, because there was like this stigma for a long, long time. If you're a 5th-year senior, 4th-year senior, what the heck are you doing? Why are you still in school? Like, why aren't you declaring and all these things? But now I think there's been some proof in the pudding that stay, develop, and you're still going to have your chance there. How has the NFL shifted, and is there still that bit of a stigma hanging around that does concern teams about a guy's age?
Well, if there's one thing that I took away from that loaded quarterback class last year, is that experience is a great thing for quarterbacks. And it's no surprise that the 2 guys that played the most college football were the best right away in the NFL, and that's Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. So that goes to show you that experience in college is always a great thing for these quarterbacks. So, and everybody's going to talk about Shuck being 26 years old as a rookie, but I see it as a positive thing just because there's never a such thing as playing too much football in college, especially as a quarterback, especially that being such a mental position. You need all those mental reps as you can get, and Shuck has had plenty of those throughout his career.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see, man. Again, this draft class has some stars in it, and just to see what they're going to be able to do, especially from the ACC, is going to be a ton of fun. Jordan, always great to talk with you. Thank you for your time. Hopefully we'll get back together when we get a little closer. I know there's a ton going to change in the next 2 months about where guys are going to fall, and would love to have you back, brother, but always appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks as always for having me, Matt.